Let me ask you something right off the bat. What would you do if you saw a homeless man being publicly humiliated by someone in an expensive suit?
Would you step in?
Would you watch from a distance? Or would you pull out your phone and start recording? Now imagine that same crowd, once full of judgment and whispers, suddenly falling silent, shocked, ashamed, humbled, because everything they thought they knew about the situation was dead wrong. That's exactly what happened one ordinary afternoon in downtown Atlanta when one man's cruel words unleashed a truth no one saw coming. A single moment, captured on a bystander's phone, would unravel a web of assumptions and redefine what it truly means to judge a book by its cover. You're here because you saw that title, maybe felt a surge of emotion, anger, or curiosity, and I promise you, by the end of this story, you'll understand why the truth behind this encounter turned an entire crowd on its head. So stay with me, because the twist in this story, it's not just shocking, it's unforgettable. Before we dive in, let's get something straight. This isn't just another random street drama caught on camera. This story is layered, raw, and real. It touches on something deep inside us, the quiet guilt we all carry when we pass someone in need and look the other way. You've seen it, haven't you? A man with a cardboard sign at the freeway exit. A woman outside a grocery store, holding on to hope more than anything else. But what happens when the person begging for change holds a history more heroic than you ever imagined? What happens when someone society threw away turns out to be the very kind of person we honor on Veterans Day, salute in parades, and thank for our freedom? And what happens when the man doing the insulting, the one wrapped in silk ties and gold watches, isn't who he pretends to be either? Picture this: a hot, humid afternoon, the kind that makes the air feel heavy on your skin. The sidewalks are packed, tourists snapping selfies, workers grabbing lunch, the usual chaos of downtown. Right outside a trendy cafe, where the lattes cost more than a tank of gas, sits a man most people ignore. He's slumped against the wall, beard thick with dust, hands calloused, eyes tired but alert. He holds a handwritten sign that says, "Homeless vet. Hungry. Anything helps." Most people pass without a glance. A few drop spare change. One woman offers a sandwich. And then he arrives. The man in the suit. Tall, confident, expensive shoes that click loudly on the sidewalk. He pauses in front of the homeless vet, scoffs, and then, loudly, cruelly, begins to speak. "Why don't you get a job instead of begging for handouts?" he sneers, his voice sharp enough to cut through the chatter of the street. People stop. Phones come out. Some laugh nervously. Others look away. And then, he says the thing that makes even the most passive bystander wince. "You're just lazy. A leech on society. I fought harder to get my Ivy League degree than you ever did in your whole life." Now pause right there. This is where most of us make a snap judgment, right? Rich jerk bullies poor man. Another viral TikTok moment. Open and shut case.
But you're smarter than that.
You clicked on this video because you sensed there was more. Because something about this scene, it feels off. Like there's a secret waiting just beneath the surface. And guess what? There is. And you're about to find out exactly why the smug man in the designer suit chose that very moment, in front of that very crowd, to go on the attack. Spoiler alert, it wasn't random. It was intentional. And the real story? It will change the way you see people forever. Now, let me bring you into this. Think about your own life for a moment. Think about how easy it is to assume. To judge based on appearance, on clothes, on whether someone's clean-shaven or wearing shoes that aren't falling apart. We're trained to trust suits and fear rags. We've built a society where wealth equals worth and struggle equals shame. But every once in a while, something cracks that illusion wide open. This story? It's that crack. It's the moment when reality spills out in a way no one saw coming. And it all starts with a phone recording that went viral not because of a fight, but because of what came after. Here's where things start to twist. Just when the crowd begins to murmur, just when the tension thickens, the homeless man stands up.
Slowly.
Deliberately. And when he does, everything shifts.
You can see it in the way people lean forward.
This isn't the reaction they expected.
He's not yelling.
He's not crying. He's not begging. He simply stares at the man in the suit. And then he does something no one expected. He says one word, "Colonel?" And that one word, it changes everything. Suddenly the man in the suit goes pale. He stumbles. And just like that, the power dynamic flips. I want you to really feel that. Because this isn't a story about who's richer or who's louder. This is a story about identity, dignity, and a past that refuses to stay buried. The crowd doesn't know what's happening yet. You don't either. But you're going to. You're here because you want to know the truth. You want to understand how a public shaming turned into a moment of reckoning. You want to see how the roles of villain and victim blur when secrets are exposed. And I promise you, by the time we get to the end, you'll not only understand what happened that day, but you'll never look at another homeless stranger the same way again. You see, this story taps into some of the most trending topics we talk about every day: veteran homelessness, public shaming, viral moments, fake personas, and the masks people wear in public. On YouTube, people are searching for things like emotional street encounters, homeless veteran transformations, rich versus poor social experiment, and unexpected hero stories. This video isn't just a story, it's your window into all those things. And more importantly, it's about the part of you that wants justice, that wants compassion, that wants people to be seen for who they truly are. That's why you're still watching. That's why you can't look away. Let's be real. In a world driven by clickbait, drama, and 10-second clips, it's rare to find something that actually stays with you. But this story? It's not one you'll forget tomorrow. It's one you'll think about the next time you pass someone sitting on a sidewalk. It's one that might make you stop, look closer, and wonder what stories they carry that you'll never know. Because this man, the one in the suit, he had a secret. And the homeless vet? He had a past that tied them together in ways that would leave the entire crowd stunned and speechless. So stay with me. Don't click away. Because what happens next isn't just surprising, it's jaw-dropping. We're about to uncover the hidden connection between these two men, the dark truth behind the confrontation, and the shocking reveal that left the crowd gasping. Trust me when I say, the moment the truth comes out, it'll hit you like a freight train. Everything you thought about that scene, everything you thought you knew, will flip upside down. And when it does, you'll realize the story isn't just about them. It's about us. All of us. Now, let me take you back to that street corner. The sun is still beating down. The cameras are still rolling. The crowd is holding its breath. The man in the suit is frozen. And the homeless vet? He's about to say something that will make the entire world stop and listen. But you'll have to wait to hear it. Because the next words out of his mouth, they're the key to the entire mystery. The silence that followed the word "Colonel" wasn't just awkward, it was thunderous. The crowd, once half distracted by phone screens and iced coffees, was now gripped, eyes darting between the two men like they were watching a live courtroom drama unfold. You could feel the air shift, like everyone suddenly realized they were witnessing something far deeper than a street altercation. The suited man, once so bold, so smug, was suddenly rattled. His jaw tightened. His eyes flickered with something unspoken, something like recognition, maybe even guilt. He didn't respond immediately. He couldn't. And in that moment of hesitation, everything began to unravel. What most people didn't know, what no one on that sidewalk could have guessed, is that the homeless man, who looked like he hadn't had a warm bed or a decent meal in weeks, hadn't always lived this way. In fact, just 8 months earlier, he'd been living in a modest but clean apartment on the edge of town. His name was Sam Wilcox. A former Marine who had served 2 tours overseas, Sam came back with medals, scars, and memories he'd never speak of. He was one of those quiet heroes, no parades, no glory, just a man who did his duty and came home hoping to find some peace. But peace is slippery, especially when your nights are haunted by things the average American can't even imagine. And for Sam, what started as insomnia turned into isolation, then spiraled into something darker. After returning home, Sam tried to adjust. He picked up odd jobs, mechanic work, late-night security gigs, whatever paid enough to keep the lights on. He kept to himself, rarely socialized, and lived with a kind of quiet dignity that made him invisible to most people. But the struggle was real. The VA paperwork was a mess, his benefits kept getting delayed, and eventually his mental health appointments were so backed up, he just stopped showing up. By the time winter rolled around, he was barely hanging on. Then came the final blow. His landlord, citing renovation plans, doubled the rent. With no family left and no savings to fall back on, Sam found himself on the street with nothing but a backpack and a military-issued sleeping bag. And just like that, the man who once stood guard over convoys in hostile territory became another face people avoided on the sidewalk. But here's the thing, Sam wasn't the kind of man to just give up. Even on the street, he kept routines. He cleaned up at public restrooms. He read at the library to stay sharp. And every morning, without fail, he polished his old military dog tags and tucked them into the breast pocket of his coat. It wasn't pride.
It was identity.
A reminder that even if the world had moved on without him, he was still somebody. Still a Marine. Still a man with a past that mattered. So, what led to that confrontation outside the cafe? Why did the man in the suit, who later identified himself as Gregory Langston, a high-profile financial consultant and keynote speaker on personal accountability, feel the need to belittle a man already on the edge of survival? That's where things get complicated. Because Langston, for all his corporate gloss and polished image, wasn't exactly the success story he claimed to be. In fact, if you dug just a little beneath the surface, you'd find a trail of failed startups, lawsuits quietly settled, and whispers about ethics violations in his former firm. The man had enemies, and more than a few skeletons. Some say Langston targeted Sam that day because he was looking for a scapegoat, a way to puff himself up in front of a film crew shooting B-roll for a Street Smarts social media campaign he was launching. Others believe it was personal, that he knew Sam, or at least recognized him, and lashed out preemptively to hide something. Then there's the more sinister theory, the one that starts making the rounds after the video goes viral, that the two men share a deeper connection. One forged not in business, but in war, and maybe not on the same side. Sam, for his part, never called attention to any of this. Even as the video racked up millions of views under titles like "Millionaire exposes himself by insulting hero vet" and "Homeless veteran confronts high-powered exec," crowd shocked by what happens next, he stayed quiet. Reporters tried to track him down, influencers wanted interviews, even a few veteran organizations reached out to offer help. But Sam vanished. Just disappeared, like smoke in the wind. And that's when people really started asking questions. Who was he, really? Was he just another down-on-his-luck veteran? Or was there something more? Some Reddit threads suggested Sam might have worked in special operations, black ops, maybe even intelligence, based on his bearing, his calm under pressure, the way he sized up Langston without flinching. Others dug up an old, grainy photo from a deployment in Fallujah that bore a striking resemblance to him, but the man in the photo had a different name tag. More speculation. No answers. And Langston? After the video went viral, he canceled all public appearances, citing stress and family concerns, but insiders said he was dealing with far more than burnout. His reputation was imploding. Old accusations were resurfacing. Sponsors pulled out. And a former employee even suggested there was classified baggage in his past he had spent years burying. Theories spread like wildfire. Some believe Sam had once saved Langston's life overseas and was betrayed afterward. Others thought the two had been part of a covert mission gone wrong, one that the government quietly erased. A few even believed Langston had framed Sam for something, which led to the breakdown of his life and descent into homelessness. No one could prove any of it, but the questions wouldn't go away. And the more people watched the video, the body language, the expressions, the subtle shifts in tone, the more convinced they became that this wasn't just a random street fight. It was a reckoning years in the making. Even more mysterious was the way the crowd behaved after the confrontation. A few witnesses reported seeing Langston physically tremble. One woman claimed she heard him mutter, "You weren't supposed to be here." But no one could verify it. Another said she saw Sam slip something into Langston's hand before walking away, a folded piece of paper, maybe, or a photograph. That part of the footage was conveniently blocked by someone's elbow. Yet the rumor alone was enough to spark a new wave of online sleuthing. What was exchanged? A threat? A warning? A memory? And here's where it gets even messier. About 2 weeks after the incident, a whistleblower email surfaced, sent anonymously to several journalists and tagged with a single phrase, Operation Sand Echo. Attached were blurry scans of what appeared to be mission reports, classified ones, from a 2006 deployment involving a Special Forces unit under temporary CIA command. One of the redacted names had initials matching Langston's. Another had none at all, just a codename, Shadow Fox. That name, oddly enough, appears in military forums as a ghost story. A soldier who saved dozens but never officially existed. A hero erased. Could Sam be Shadow Fox? Could Langston have built his empire on a lie, on a mission gone sideways, on someone else's sacrifice? No one knows for sure. But the tension in this story keeps building. Every new theory adds a layer of uncertainty. Every uncovered clue paints a new version of the truth. And at the center of it all are two men, one who's seemingly lost everything, and one who's desperately trying to keep something buried. But what really happened overseas? What binds these men together in a moment of fury and silence? What secret from the battlefield followed them into a public sidewalk in America? You're going to want to stick around, because the deeper we go, the more you'll see that this isn't just a story about a veteran and a businessman. It's about betrayal, buried pasts, and the kind of justice that doesn't always come through courtrooms or headlines. Sometimes it comes through one moment of truth in front of a crowd and a camera. Just when it felt like the internet was getting closer to the truth, when theories started aligning and pieces of the puzzle seemed to fit, a strange thing happened. The original video, the one that sparked everything, suddenly disappeared from multiple platforms. Not just taken down for copyright or flagged for inappropriate content, but entirely scrubbed, metadata, backups, even reposts mysteriously wiped out. Channels that had mirrored the clip found their accounts temporarily locked. Some were told they had violated national security guidelines. National security? For a street confrontation between a rich guy and a homeless vet? That was the moment people realized the story ran deeper than anyone had dared imagine. Because this wasn't just about viral content anymore. Someone, somewhere, wanted the world to forget what they saw. Sam, who had been quiet ever since the confrontation, reappeared briefly in a grainy security cam still from a 24-hour diner in rural Georgia. Alone, sitting by the window with a cup of black coffee and that same coat. He looked thinner, more worn down, like he'd been living in shadows. A waitress later said he asked for directions, left a $10 tip on a $3 tab, and vanished before she could ask his name. But the strange part? He had asked her if the place still had a payphone out back. When she told him no, he just nodded and said, "It's better that way." The waitress didn't think much of it until the FBI showed up 2 days later, asking about him. That's when she knew this wasn't just a story anymore. It was something bigger, something dangerous. Meanwhile, Langston remained silent, but not idle. He began erasing his digital footprint, closing down personal websites, deleting years of tweets, and backing out of speaking engagements. One of his former assistants anonymously reached out to a journalist, claiming she overheard a panicked phone call where Langston said, "He remembers. He's putting it together. If that file shows up, we're both finished." But when pressed for more details, she went quiet. A week later, she posted on Instagram that she was leaving the country for a while to unplug. She hasn't been heard from since. Back on the digital front, a user under the handle DeepRecon13 posted a heavily redacted document on a military conspiracy forum, hinting at a past operation gone wrong. Operation Sand Echo again. This time, it mentioned a civilian contractor asset who was embedded in the mission under false credentials. That asset was tied to a private intelligence firm, one now owned by a shell corporation linked to Langston. That revelation shifted the entire narrative. It wasn't just a battlefield secret. It was corporate, political, covered up at a level far beyond just two men and a sidewalk scuffle. But before that lead could gain traction, the post vanished and the user's account was deleted within minutes. One user managed to screenshot part of the thread before it disappeared. In it, Deep Recon 13 claimed that one of the unit's own men had leaked coordinates to a rival group during a 2006 mission, causing the deaths of several U.S. soldiers. The only two survivors of that ambush were the unnamed Shadow Fox and the asset now suspected to be Langston. The implication? Langston betrayed the unit and framed Sam to save himself. That was the cost of Langston's rise to power, a cover-up buried beneath polished speeches and seven-figure deals. But just as these claims gained momentum, a key source vanished. A former military analyst who had been digging into Operation Sand Echo was set to release a podcast episode exposing new intel. The teaser had already gone live, titled Shadow Fox Unmasked, and it promised a special guest with first-hand knowledge. But when the episode dropped, it was nothing but static. Then a message. We've been warned. No story is worth dying for. That single sentence sent a chill through the community. The post was quickly deleted, and all social media accounts linked to the podcast went dark. It was becoming painfully clear that someone was actively suppressing the truth. Whether it was through intimidation, blackmail, or something worse, people who got too close to Sam's story were being silenced. Still, the trail wasn't completely cold. Sam left behind traces, patterns, movements that only those really paying attention could piece together. He was searching for someone. Not just Langston, someone else. Someone he called the Broker. A name that showed up in a now-archived contract between a private military firm and an undisclosed client during the Sand Echo timeline. But who was this broker? A CIA handler? A political fixer? A corporate cleanup man? Then came the moment no one expected. A man claiming to be a former intelligence officer contacted an independent journalist who had been covering the story since day one. He said he had information that could not only vindicate Sam, but expose a massive corruption network dating back nearly 2 decades. But the meeting he arranged never happened. The journalist showed up at the drop site, an old abandoned train yard on the outskirts of Chicago, but the contact never arrived. Instead, she found a file folder duct taped to the underside of a bench. Inside were grainy photos from a desert airfield, a list of names, and a cassette tape labeled Valhalla Protocol. Before she could analyze the contents, her car was broken into and the folder stolen. She was shaken but unharmed. A message was left on her windshield. Last warning. Like ghosts, stay buried. Now, with sources going dark, evidence disappearing, and Sam still off the grid, the story teeters on the edge of collapse. Is Sam running toward justice, or away from something even darker? Is Langston the villain, or a pawn? And who is this broker that every trail seems to lead back to? The more you dig, the less you understand. Every answer only opens more questions. And just when you think you're starting to figure it out, when the threads seem to tighten and form a clearer picture, something changes. A new clue. A forgotten face. A message in a bottle that turns the whole thing upside down. Because just last night, in a locked forum only accessible by former military intelligence operatives, a new user appeared. No username. No avatar. Just a time-stamped message. Shadow Fox never died. And I have the proof. Across the country, in a quiet suburb just outside Denver, a woman named Erica Wallace stepped outside to pick up her morning newspaper when she noticed something strange sitting on her front porch. A thick yellow envelope with no return address, sealed tight with electrical tape. She hadn't spoken about Sam Fletcher in years, not since she left her job at the VA hospital where he was briefly treated after returning from deployment. Erica had been his nurse, but more than that, she was someone Sam trusted. She was the only one he ever spoke to about the nightmares, about the voice recordings he kept hidden in a cheap tape recorder, about the day everything changed in that scorched Middle Eastern canyon. For years, she thought he was delusional until now. The moment she peeled back the tape and opened the envelope, everything she thought she knew shattered. Inside, there was a photocopy of a classified after-action report from 2006. But the name of the unaccounted civilian contractor listed in the final paragraph wasn't Langston like everyone assumed. It was Sam. At first glance, the document seemed to flip the entire story on its head. Was Sam the insider? The ghost operative who betrayed his unit? But then Erica noticed something else. 2 lines of text had been crudely blacked out, and next to them, written in jagged ink, "What you're seeing isn't the truth. It's what they want you to believe." Underneath that, a second note. Check the recorder. Entry 7. You'll understand everything. Her blood ran cold. She hadn't seen that old recorder in nearly a decade, but she knew exactly where it was. Hidden in a shoebox in her basement, behind family photos and forgotten keepsakes. When she powered it on, the battery light flickered, but it still worked. Entry 7 began with the sound of heavy breathing and static, followed by Sam's voice, clear and urgent. He wasn't scared, he was angry. He spoke of being set up, of someone rewriting mission files, erasing timestamps, reshuffling communications. "They called me in knowing I was the expendable piece. The others were just collateral. And the one who ordered it all?
He's not done.
He's moved into something bigger, stateside." The tape ended with the sound of footsteps and what sounded like a gun being cocked. Erica didn't know what to think. Had Sam been framed from the beginning? Or was this another layer in a web of carefully constructed lies? She needed answers fast, but contacting anyone directly would put her at risk. So she reached out to the only person she believed might still be alive from Sam's old unit, Darius King, a former military contractor turned security consultant now living off-grid in the Nevada desert. Darius had always been a mystery himself, rumored to have gone rogue after a mission went sideways. She sent him a secure email through a darknet contact form they had set up years ago. A day later, he replied with one line. "They're watching all of us now.
Get to Point Echo.
You have 5 days." Meanwhile, on the East Coast, Langston appeared on a nationally televised panel discussing veteran mental health and reintegration. To most viewers, he came across as compassionate, even remorseful, saying things like, "We've failed too many of our heroes, and we have to fix a broken system before we lose more lives." But those who had been following the deeper story, the ones who had seen the clues, the erased footage, the disappearing documents, knew better. Behind his well-polished rhetoric was a man desperate to keep something buried. Even more suspicious was the fact that his foundation had just received a sudden $8 million donation from a shell company based in the Cayman Islands, the same company linked to classified defense contracts from the Sand Echo era. As Erica prepared to head west, others started surfacing with stories eerily similar to Sam's. A retired communications officer posted an anonymous confession on Reddit, claiming he was instructed to falsify mission records back in 2006 and forward them to a private entity operating under diplomatic immunity. Within hours, the post was removed and the user deleted their account. A few screenshots survived and were circulated on conspiracy forums, igniting theories that Sam and Langston were both pawns, used by a third party known only in black budget files as Red Echo. No one knew what Red Echo actually did, but whispers suggested they were not just military. They operated across corporate and intelligence boundaries. And their goal? Not just covering up past operations, but manipulating the narrative in real time. Tensions mounted when another former VA worker, this time from New York, received a threatening letter inside a hollowed-out book titled Silent Authority. Inside the back cover, a message was scrawled in red marker. "You spoke once. Speak again and you won't get a warning." The woman, who once oversaw Sam's medical intake, went into hiding. Her daughter claimed her mother had been increasingly paranoid for months, talking about how someone had accessed her computer remotely, how she kept hearing clicks on her phone, how she was being followed by a white SUV. That SUV? Captured on neighborhood cameras. Plate untraceable. Now the public is more divided than ever. Is Sam a hero who stumbled onto a truth too dangerous to reveal? Or is he an unstable operative with a history of trauma and a vendetta against a man who made it out clean? And what about Erica? Why is she risking everything now? Does she know more than she's letting on? With new information contradicting old narratives and everyone appearing to have their own version of the truth, nothing feels certain anymore. And just when things couldn't get more chaotic, a new video drops on an encrypted channel run by whistleblowers. It's grainy, dark, and clearly filmed in secret. A man's face is hidden in shadow, but his voice is steady. "You're asking the wrong questions," he says. "Langston and Sam? They were just the beginning. What you should be asking is, who is running Operation Sand Echo? And where are they now?" Then the screen cuts to black, and a single word flashes on the screen. Valhalla. What is Valhalla? Is it the final piece, or the next level of deception? Erica had driven straight through the night, the rhythmic hum of tires on cracked desert roads her only company. As the miles passed, the weight of everything she'd uncovered began pressing down harder than ever before. Point Echo wasn't a place found on GPS. It wasn't a marked site or a decommissioned base. It was a code name, passed in whispers among those who knew what they weren't supposed to know. When she finally reached the faded ruins of what looked like an old weather station nestled in the Nevada basin, the air felt still, too still. Every shadow seemed to stretch too long, every rusted fence and busted-out window a reminder that this place had once lived and been buried for a reason. She parked her car behind a collapsed hangar and grabbed her bag. The cassette recorder, still with Sam's message intact, was tucked inside. But before she stepped out, she caught movement in her rearview mirror. A glint, a figure, gone in an instant. Her heart pounded. She stepped out, slowly, scanning the horizon. Nothing but sand, brush, and the dying light of sunset. She moved fast, ducking into the structure and finding what looked like an access tunnel beneath the main building. Darius had left no instructions, only the name Point Echo and the warning about 5 days. It had been exactly 5. She descended into the dark, flashlight trembling in her grip. Down there, among old equipment and shattered monitors, she found what appeared to be a storage locker pried open and recently disturbed. Inside, she discovered a folder of photographs, dusty, curling at the edges but real. Men in uniform. A tarmac. A private jet with no visible tail number. One of the faces in the photo, her hands began to shake, was Sam. Not in uniform. In a suit. Standing beside Langston. Smiling. She dropped the folder and backed away, her mind reeling. Nothing made sense. The photos were time-stamped just 3 months before the ambush that supposedly destroyed the unit. If they were together, on American soil, then everything Sam told her, everything she thought she believed, was suspect. Her thoughts spiraled. Had he manipulated her? Used her as part of some elaborate cover story? Had she walked into a trap? Then her phone buzzed. No signal, but one notification had somehow made it through, just a single image sent from an unknown number. It was a picture of her daughter, walking home from school, time-stamped 5 minutes ago. Erica froze. The implication was chillingly clear. Someone had eyes on her family. This wasn't just about truth anymore, it was a warning. Her instincts screamed to run, but she couldn't leave. Not yet. Not without understanding what she had just seen. As she tried to make sense of it, a faint echo sounded from the tunnel behind her. Boots on concrete.
Slow.
Deliberate. She killed the flashlight and held her breath, pressing into the shadows as the sound came closer. And then, silence. She stayed frozen for what felt like hours, the suffocating darkness feeding her panic. She didn't know who was down there or what they wanted, but she knew now, this wasn't a rogue government operation. This was something much older, more insidious. Not about mistakes or military cover-ups, but control. Narrative control. Reality control. A force willing to rewrite history, silence the innocent, and erase those who asked too many questions. When she finally slipped out and climbed back to her car, the Nevada sky had gone black, moonless and vast. She turned the key, nothing. Dead battery. But she had just driven it an hour ago. She popped the hood, and what she saw chilled her. Every wire had been snipped, cleanly, deliberately. Her breath caught. Someone wanted her stranded. In the distance, she saw headlights crest a nearby ridge. Just one vehicle. Moving slow. No road out here. No one should be here. Her thoughts were a whirlwind. Had Darius set her up? Was he even real? Or was he another ghost in this machine? Part of a deeper game she had only just begun to understand? She took the cassette from her bag and ran, no direction, just away from the lights. She couldn't risk staying. As she pushed deeper into the desert, her phone buzzed again, this time with a voice message, distorted but unmistakably male. "You brought the tape. That was your mistake. We warned Sam. He didn't listen. Don't make the same choice." Back east, in a quiet apartment in D.C., a junior analyst working night shift at a defense subcontractor tapped into a data packet flagged for deletion. Curious, he opened it. Inside, surveillance stills from Point Echo. One clearly showed Erica, crouching by the locker. The metadata tagged her as a Tier 3 civilian threat. His mouse hovered, uncertain, before he clicked forward. The next image? Sam Fletcher. Time-stamped 12 hours earlier. He was standing inside the tunnel.
Alive.
Watching. Erica doesn't know yet. But she's not alone out there. And the game she's in? It's only just beginning. Erica's legs ached as she trudged through the loose sand, her shoes filling with grit, lungs tightening from the cold desert air. Every sound behind her felt like a footstep, every distant howl of wind through the brush like a whisper meant only for her. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to stay ahead of whoever was hunting her. Hours passed without any sign of a road, a light, or even a landmark. But as dawn threatened to break over the horizon, she spotted something unexpected glinting in the rising light, an old metal shed, half buried in the sand. It looked abandoned, but she didn't have a choice. She pushed the rusted door open and stepped inside, flashlight flickering against dust-caked walls and broken shelves. At first, the space seemed empty. Then she saw it, a wall covered in newspaper clippings, photos, and red string. A conspiracy map, but this wasn't hers. Someone else had been connecting the dots. And at the center of the web was a photo of Sam. Next to it, a sticky note. Asset 22. Misfire protocol. Phase 3 imminent. Erica's breath caught in her throat. Her hands trembled as she scanned the other notes. There were files from Langston's Foundation, VA medical logs, even confidential audio transcripts. Someone had been tracking the same trail, but much deeper than she ever could. And then she saw it, a name scribbled in capital letters on the back of an old invoice. Miles Wallace. Her husband. Deceased for over 8 years. Killed in a car accident on a rainy stretch of highway. Her vision blurred. She hadn't thought about that night in years. The truck came out of nowhere, the crash so violent it tore the vehicle in half. They told her he died instantly. She'd mourned, buried, and moved on until now. Why would his name appear in a shed hundreds of miles from home, tied to a classified military op and a man who should have died years ago? She stumbled backward, knocking over a crate. A dusty laptop slid out. She powered it on. No password. Just one folder on the desktop titled, Valhalla Initiative. Inside were scanned documents, medical records, deployment logs, drone surveillance, many labeled with Miles's name. One particularly detailed file described a covert psychological conditioning program designed for military field agents who were considered too unstable for traditional assignments, but too valuable to discard. Code name, Misfire. The shock hit her like a freight train. Her husband hadn't died by accident.
He'd been part of something.
Recruited. Maybe even programmed. It all connected. Sam's erratic behavior. The rewritten mission files. Langston's sudden rise. They weren't enemies or victims. They were part of a controlled experiment that went off the rails. And if Miles had been involved, it meant Erica was never just a bystander. She'd been watched for years, her life shaped, nudged, manipulated. Suddenly, a voice rang out behind her, calm, familiar, almost casual. Took you long enough. She spun around, flashlight blinding the figure in the doorway. Her heart stopped. It was Sam.
Alive. Real.
Standing there like he'd just walked out of a memory. "You were never supposed to get this far," he said, lowering a hood to reveal a scarred face aged by years of hardship. "But you did. And now you need to understand. This was never about me." Erica backed away, overwhelmed. "My husband, Miles. What happened?" Sam shook his head. stepping slowly into the light. Miles didn't die. He was pulled out, extracted, reassigned. They faked the crash. You were the final variable in a long-term test. Emotional proximity to the asset. You were monitored for how you'd respond, how grief influenced your memory, your actions. They wanted to see if truth could be completely overwritten. Erica's knees nearly buckled. None of it made sense. Yet it explained everything. The strange gaps in her memory, the way she always felt like someone was watching, the strange calls she received on birthdays from untraceable numbers, always just breathing. "Why now?" she whispered. "Why let me find all this?" Sam gave a dark smile. "Because Langston's gone rogue. He doesn't want the truth buried. He wants to own it.
Control it.
And if he gets to Valhalla first, the rest of us disappear. For real this time." Erica's mind reeled, her understanding of reality unraveling at lightning speed. "So, what is Valhalla?" she asked, desperate. Sam's expression changed, grimmer, dead serious. "It's not a place. It's a kill switch. An AI archive that holds every Black Op file, every identity rewrite, every memory experiment the program ever ran. If he gets access, he can wipe all of us. Erase every trace. You, me, even Miles." Just as the weight of that truth landed, the shed lit up with headlights from outside. A vehicle, military grade. Then another. Sam grabbed her arm. "No more time. They're here." Erica looked back at the chaos of photos and notes on the wall, the proof that had once felt like the end of her search, now only the beginning of a much darker path. She didn't know who to trust, what to believe, or whether the man she once loved was even the same person anymore. But she knew this much. They were being hunted, and whatever answers were left, they weren't going to be found by standing still. The desert wind howled like a warning as Erica and Sam scrambled from the back of the shed, ducking low and cutting across the ridge just before the armored convoy crested the rise. They didn't speak. There was no time, and too much between them now. The silence, thick with mistrust and urgency, told its own story. They moved quickly toward a crumbling ravine Sam said led to an abandoned airstrip he'd used before. But every step forward only twisted the knot in Erica's chest tighter. The man beside her was the only person who could answer the questions clawing at her insides, and yet every answer he gave cracked the floor beneath her further. The man she trusted was either the last remaining ally she had, or the final betrayal waiting to snap shut. They reached the ravine as the sun dipped behind the hills, shadows stretching long like reaching hands. As they caught their breath behind a rock outcrop, Erica turned to him, her voice low but raw with fury. "You said Miles was reassigned. That he's alive. Where is he, Sam? What else are you not telling me?" Sam hesitated just a second too long. It was subtle, but Erica saw it. The flicker in his eyes, the weight in his posture. "He's not who you remember," he finally said. "After Valhalla went dark, they broke the agents into ghost units. Miles led one. His last confirmed location was Kazakhstan 3 years ago. After that, nothing. We thought he was dead. Or worse." Erica's voice cracked. "Worse." Sam didn't flinch. Turned. The word hit her like a physical blow. Turned, flipped, compromised, or completely rewritten. The program didn't just delete people. It reprogrammed them. Changed their motives, allegiances, even their memories. If that had happened to Miles, then the man she loved might be out there operating under a whole new identity, a weapon in someone else's war. The idea that he could be alive but unreachable, twisted into something unrecognizable, ripped a hole through her resolve. "If he's been turned, why haven't they used him against me?" she asked. Sam met her eyes. "Maybe they already have." That's when it happened. Her burner phone buzzed again, this time with a video. No number, no message. Just a single clip. She pressed play, hands trembling. The video showed a live feed from inside her house, her daughter curled up on the couch, headphones in, completely unaware. Then a slow pan across the room. Another figure. A man. Just out of frame. But something in the way he moved, the broad shoulders, the tilt of his head. Erica's heart stopped. "Pause it," Sam said. grabbing the screen. He zoomed in, enhancing the reflection off a glass photo frame on the shelf. It was faint, warped, but undeniable. Miles.
Alive.
Inside her home. Every part of Erica screamed to run, to get to her daughter, to protect her, to do something. But Sam grabbed her by the shoulders, firm, pleading. You can't go back. That's exactly what they want. It's bait. If you show up, you lead them right to Valhalla. Her voice broke. That's my daughter, Sam. He shook his head, pain and frustration in his eyes. I know. But if you go now, you won't just lose her. You'll lose the truth. And if we lose the truth, this never ends. The program lives on. You have to choose. It was the impossible choice, the one that shattered the soul. Run to save her child and potentially fall into a trap that could erase them all, or keep running toward a truth that might save countless others, but risk the one person she loved most. Erica turned away, unable to breathe, tears streaking silently down her face. She had spent years living in the illusion that her husband was gone and that her daughter was safe. Now, both beliefs were slipping through her fingers. What if they already turned her too? She whispered. Sam didn't answer. And that silence was worse than any lie. Suddenly, a distant rumble echoed through the canyon.
A drone.
Low, methodical, sweeping across the ravine like a hunter. Sam pulled her down just in time, the shadow of the machine cutting across them as it passed. We have to move, he said, voice tight. They're narrowing in. Erica followed, but her legs felt heavier with every step. Her thoughts raced, spiraling into memories of her last conversation with Miles before his accident, moments she dismissed as paranoia, a strange look in his eye, a hesitation in his goodbye. Had he known even then? They reached a maintenance shack by the edge of the old runway, its roof partially caved in. Inside, Sam had hidden supplies, a map, burner comms, encrypted drives. That's when another phone rang. Not Erica's. A backup Sam had tucked away. He answered, voice cautious. Go. The voice on the other end was distorted, but Erica recognized the cadence. The tone. She has 2 hours. If she wants her daughter back, she knows where to come. Alone. The line went dead. Erica stared at Sam, chest heaving. Tell me you didn't set this up. His eyes darkened. I didn't. But someone just raised the stakes. In that moment, the entire mystery reshaped itself. This wasn't just about Valhalla or some buried program. This was personal. Someone knew Erica's every move, her history, her pain points. Someone wanted her to feel this pressure, to fall apart under it. And whoever was behind it wasn't finished yet. Erica had never moved this fast in her life. But adrenaline overpowered exhaustion as she tore through the darkness toward the one place they said never to return to, Facility E-13, the forgotten bunker buried beneath Nevada sands. Sam cursed under his breath as he drove, knuckles white around the steering wheel. This is suicide, he growled. They'll be waiting. Erica didn't care. Every second they hesitated, her daughter remained in the hands of people who had orchestrated a psychological war on her family. But it wasn't until they reached the outskirts of the perimeter that the truth finally started bleeding through the cracks. Armed vehicles weren't just clustered around the entrance. They were parked in defensive patterns. This wasn't a cleanup crew. It was an operation. Full-scale, coordinated, and deeply funded. The kind of movement only a shadow government or a private military contractor could pull off without ever appearing on the news. And then it hit her. This isn't just about me, she said quietly, her breath catching. They're not trying to erase one person, they're erasing everyone who ever knew about Valhalla. Sam didn't respond at first, but the subtle tremor in his hand gave him away. There were others, he finally admitted. You weren't the only operative to question what they were doing. But you were the only one who disappeared before they could silence you. Erica turned to him slowly. What happened to the others? Sam's jaw clenched. Accidents. Suicides. Plane crashes. One disappeared off the grid in Montana with his whole family, never found. Another was found in a burned-out cabin, made to look like a gas leak. Erica's stomach turned. This wasn't just about exposure. It was a systematic purge of anyone who posed a risk. The truth wasn't just inconvenient, it was radioactive. And now, they were forcing her back into the epicenter. As they approached the facility's back tunnel, a forgotten maintenance shaft Erica had used years ago, she began to piece it together. If Miles had been turned, if her daughter was being used as leverage, then this entire nightmare wasn't just revenge. It was protocol. And Sam had been conveniently available, always at the right place, with just enough help to keep her from falling, but not enough to stop the spiral. She stared at him. When were you going to tell me you were still on their payroll? The look in his eyes told her everything. It wasn't denial. It wasn't shock. It was regret.
Deep.
Hollow. I was supposed to track you. That's all. I didn't know they'd involve your kid. Her voice cracked with betrayal. You were the one person I thought was real.
Sam sighed.
I was. Until they gave me a choice. I stay close to you, or I disappear like the others. I did what I had to. I'm sorry. She raised her gun slowly, heart pounding. Then why are you still helping me? Sam looked her dead in the eyes. Because I didn't know Miles was alive. I didn't know they'd go this far. And if I let them finish this, I'm no better than them. Erica didn't lower the weapon. But she didn't pull the trigger either. Because in that moment, the betrayal hurt more than the danger. And yet, she still needed him. Because what lay beyond the rusted steel doors of E-13 was something even worse than betrayal. It was the absolute truth, one she now realized had been orchestrated for decades. They entered through the service shaft, the lights long dead, but the air thrumming with electricity. As they descended, Erica spotted motion sensor triggers, recently installed. They weren't guarding an abandoned facility. They were hosting something. A command post. Or worse, an execution site. When they reached the lower level, the full scale of the operation was visible. Screens, personnel, encrypted comms, all buzzing with activity. This wasn't military. This was private intelligence, black site level. And at the center, a woman Erica hadn't seen in over a decade. Director Karen Hollis, the former Valhalla handler who had signed off on every operation. Presumed dead in a diplomatic bombing in Tunisia. Now alive and smiling like nothing had changed. You made it, Hollis said, her tone eerily warm. And right on time. Erica froze. Where's my daughter? Hollis gestured behind her. And there, standing quietly beside an armed guard, was her daughter, awake, unharmed, and eerily calm. Almost robotic. Erica stepped forward, but Hollis raised a hand. Before we go any further, there's something you need to understand. This isn't about your family. It's about legacy, control, continuity. She walked over to a console, brought up footage of every operative from the Valhalla era, names, missions, outcomes. Then she clicked a tab labeled Reintegration. Erica's blood went cold. They hadn't just erased operatives. They had reprogrammed them, repurposed them into society, politicians, CEOs, influencers. Planted strategically across the U.S. with sleeper commands buried in neuroconditioning files. You think your story matters? Hollis whispered. You're just one chapter. We're already writing the next book. Erica stepped back, the walls closing in. Everything she thought she understood about her past, her mission, her family, had been scripted by people who saw humanity as a tool to be sharpened and stored. And Miles? Hollis turned, eyes gleaming. He's here. And he volunteered. That's when Erica heard the sound behind her.
Boots.
Steady. Familiar. Hello, Erica. It was Miles. Not broken. Not hesitant. But confident. Sharp.
And completely changed.
The world narrowed as Erica stood frozen in that underground war room, her heart a thunderous drumbeat against her ribs. She stared into the eyes of the man who had once meant everything. Miles, her husband, her anchor, now a ghost wrapped in steel. His expression wasn't cold, exactly. It was disturbingly calm, as if years of emotional pain had been sanded smooth by programming and purpose. Behind him, Director Hollis watched with clinical interest, like a scientist awaiting the outcome of a lab experiment. Every fiber of Erica's being screamed to run to her daughter, but she knew the moment she moved, it would trigger a chain reaction she couldn't control. This wasn't just about saving one person anymore. It was about exposing a system that had manipulated minds, rewritten identities, and weaponized loyalty itself. And she only had one chance. "Miles," she said carefully, voice trembling. "Do you know who I am?" He blinked slowly, like the name tugged at something buried deep beneath layers of psychological armor. "You were my wife," he said. "Before the directive."
Directive.
The word hit her like ice water. She had read about it once, in a file so classified it didn't even have a name, just a string of binary tied to neurological conditioning protocols.
It wasn't just brainwashing.
It was personality restructuring at the molecular level, turning the most loyal soldiers into living drones who followed an internal code that could override even love. Her voice cracked. "They did this to you.
They stole you.
They took our daughter." But Miles didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped forward slowly, almost cautiously.
No.
"I volunteered." The words knocked the air from her lungs. "What?" "I saw what we were becoming. Valhalla was already collapsing. We were compromised. I knew we couldn't win fighting from the outside, so I offered myself. I let them take my memories, my freedom, and in exchange, I bought time for you. For her." Erica staggered back, trying to process it. All these years thinking he'd been taken, when in truth, he had walked willingly into the lion's den. But before she could respond, an alarm sounded through the facility, a deep mechanical wail that echoed off concrete walls. Sam burst through the side entrance, bleeding from the shoulder, his face wild. "We've got company. Outside. Not ours." Hollis's expression flickered for the first time, a rare flash of concern breaking through her porcelain control. She stormed to the console, typing furiously. The security cams came alive with feed from above, dozens of SUVs, unmarked, moving in formation. A breach team. Possibly federal. Possibly rogue ex-Valhalla agents who'd had enough. Erica took the opportunity and lunged toward her daughter, pulling her into her arms. The girl flinched slightly, as if her brain was still adjusting to the chaos, but there was recognition in her eyes. A spark. Something real. "You need to decide, Miles," Erica said without turning.
Right now.
"You either let them finish what they started, or you come with us. You come home." For a moment, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Miles stepped forward and raised his weapon. Erica braced herself, but the shot didn't come. Instead, he turned and fired into the control panel behind Hollis, sending sparks flying and systems crashing. Sirens blared as power surged, plunging sections of the bunker into flickering darkness. Hollis shrieked, but before she could pull her sidearm, Miles disarmed her with brutal precision. "No more," he said, voice thick with something almost human again. "It ends here." But as they turned to flee, the final twist hit them like a blade in the dark. On the secondary monitor, a new feed opened, one no one had touched. A grainy video file began to play, dated weeks before Erica ever found the hidden flash drive. It showed her talking to someone she didn't remember, in a location she'd never been to, and in the corner of the video, her daughter, laughing.
Smiling.
Not abducted. Not forced. Voluntarily present. The room fell silent. Hollis, bloodied and barely conscious, let out a laugh that chilled Erica to the core. "You think you were the one being hunted? You activated all this. You triggered it. We didn't come for you. You came back to us." Erica's hands shook as she stared at the screen. Memories she didn't recognize flickered at the edge of her mind.
Repressed.
Modified. Or worse, voluntary. "What did I do?" she whispered. And no one had the answer. The silence that followed felt unnatural, like the world itself had paused to digest what they'd just seen. Erica stood in the middle of the chaos, her daughter's small, trembling hand in hers, while Sam leaned against the wall to steady himself, his blood leaving a dark smear against concrete. Miles remained still, his weapon lowered, but his face was unreadable, neither fear nor shock, but something deeper, something more human than he'd shown in years: conflict. On the flickering monitor, the video looped again, displaying that same haunting moment where Erica was laughing, relaxed, and seemingly complicit in something her conscious mind couldn't recall. It unraveled everything, every assumption, every plan, every ounce of righteous certainty she had clung to. She felt exposed, like a marionette suddenly aware of its strings, forced to question whether her memories were even her own, or whether she had simply been playing a part in a deeper script written by others. The roar of helicopters overhead shook the ground, signaling that whoever was coming was now on the verge of breaching the facility. They had minutes at best, and Erica knew that staying would mean being captured or silenced. Either way, the truth would vanish with them. But running without answers felt like abandoning a part of herself she wasn't ready to lose again. Her daughter clung tighter, and Erica looked down at the girl's face, seeing not confusion anymore but trust, a flicker of hope that somehow her mother would make sense of it all. It was that look, that belief, that anchored Erica in the storm. She turned to Miles and spoke softly but firmly, as if she were trying to reach the man buried beneath the programming. Whatever we were, whatever they turned us into, we still have a choice. We don't have to let them define us. For a heartbeat, he said nothing. Then, with a nod almost imperceptible, he turned and led them toward the emergency escape tunnel Sam had discovered earlier. The corridor stretched for what felt like miles, each step echoing with the weight of unspoken fears and broken timelines. As they emerged into the shadow of the mountains, the cold night air hit their skin like a baptism. Behind them, the compound exploded, not in flames, but in silence, lights dying one by one as systems collapsed into darkness. Whatever secrets had lived in that place were now ashes scattered in concrete dust. Weeks passed, then months. Erica moved her daughter to a remote safe house in Utah, one of the few places left untouched by federal surveillance. Miles disappeared shortly after, leaving only a single message behind, coordinates and a phrase that repeated in her dreams. The truth isn't in what we remember. It's in what we're willing to confront. She didn't try to track him down. She knew he needed space to reclaim himself, and maybe he also knew that she needed time to face what had been hidden within her. Therapy helped, but answers came in fragments, tiny flashes of the missing pieces that had once made up her life. She wasn't sure what was real anymore, but in some strange way, that stopped mattering. What mattered was who she chose to be moving forward. Sam eventually surfaced again, too, now working under a new alias, helping whistleblowers escape government black sites. He met Erica once in a dusty Nevada diner, handed her a manila folder without saying a word, and walked away. Inside were documents confirming what Erica had feared but also long suspected. She had once been part of the very system she thought she was fighting. A handler, a strategist, someone who engineered escapes and manipulated people into roles they didn't know they were playing. She had walked away from it years ago, trying to bury the weight of her past. But the past, as she'd now learned, doesn't stay buried forever. One final piece haunted her more than any, an encrypted email recovered from the server logs of Valhalla's remnants. It was addressed to her, sent years ago by an unknown source. The subject line read only, "The daughter was always the mission." That phrase circled her thoughts endlessly. Had her child been a target? A test? Or something more? A sleeper key in a war that still simmered in the shadows? Erica never shared the message with anyone, not even Sam. She raised her daughter in quiet defiance of that legacy, teaching her not fear, but awareness. To question everything, to trust slowly, to walk through the world with eyes wide open. Sometimes, when the wind was sharp and the sky heavy with clouds, Erica would still wonder who she really was before all of this. But then she'd hear her daughter laughing, carefree and real, and she would smile, because maybe that was the point, not to uncover the truth at any cost, but to choose the kind of truth worth living for. And in the stillness of that new life, she understood something profound. The greatest conspiracies weren't built in bunkers or encoded in files. They were built in forgotten conversations, altered memories, and the silent agreements people make with themselves to believe only what's safe. That was the real danger. That was the real enemy. As the screen fades to black, one question remains. What if your whole life wasn't stolen but chosen? Would you still want it back?